What if a single tree held a curse so powerful it could hold an entire village hostage for centuries? Picture a forgotten corner of the savannah, a place called Kylo, where an ancient baobab tree stands. Its trunk is swollen and scarred with a history of witchcraft and a curse that has haunted generations. For the people living in its shadow, it's not the tree of life, it's a tombstone. And a newcomer just inherited the land it stands on. Now, you won't find the village of Kylo on any historical record, but the story itself is a chilling piece of folklore. Its ingredients, a feared tree, a wrongful death, and a spirit-binding curse, echo the real beliefs that have shaped communities for centuries. This is the legend of the village that feared one tree. Ademola wasn't a superstitious man. When the letter from the solicitor arrived telling him about a great-uncle he'd never met and an inheritance of a small homestead and land, his first thought was about property value, not paranormal activity. The village, Kylo, was just a remote speck on the map, nestled in a valley that time seemed to have forgotten. The villagers were quiet, their eyes holding a guarded, weary look that Ademola just wrote off as a small-town thing. His inherited homestead was simple, but the land held the real centerpiece, a colossal baobab tree. It dominated the landscape, its bark furrowed like an old woman's face, its branches reaching like gnarled fingers toward the sky. It was magnificent, but there was an unnerving stillness around it, a silence so deep that even the birds seemed to respect it. Ademola quickly noticed how the villagers' paths would curve unnaturally to avoid it, their eyes never lingering on its twisted form. On his third day, an old woman named Aya, with eyes as deep and cloudy as a hazy sky, met him at his gate. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. "You're the new owner," she stated, her voice a dry rustle. "You should know what you own." She told him the story, a tale that had been whispered in Kylo for 200 years. The tree, she said, wasn't just wood and leaf. It was a prison. It held the spirit of a woman named Zola. As the legend went, Zola was a traditional healer in the village back in the early 19th century. She used the baobab for her remedies, knowing its properties for healing and life. She was respected until a sickness swept through the village that her knowledge couldn't stop. Fear, Aya explained, has a way of curdling reason. The villagers, desperate for a scapegoat, turned on her. They accused her of witchcraft, of causing the very sickness she was trying to cure. They didn't just execute her. They hanged her from the largest branch of the very baobab she had so revered. And with her final breath, betrayed by the people she'd served, Zola spoke a curse, not on the village, but on the tree itself. She bound her spirit to it, a vengeful guardian. The tree that was once a symbol of life became a monument to her death. Anyone who disrespected it, who took an axe to its trunk, or spoke ill of it in its shadow, would be taken, their soul trapped with hers, inside the wood. Ademola gave her a polite, skeptical smile. "That's a fascinating story, Aya, a real piece of local folklore." The old woman's eyes hardened. A hunter vanished in the 1880s, 2 teenagers on a dare in the 1950s, a land surveyor in the 80s. Your great-uncle, he didn't die of old age, son. He knew the stories, he respected the tree. But his mind started to go. He began talking to it. Then one day, he just stopped talking. The villagers believed the tree held a curse born from pure betrayal. So let me ask you, if you inherited that land, would you listen to the warning, or would you write it off as just a spooky story? Let me know what you'd do down in the comments, and if you're getting drawn into the shadows of Kylo, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. For the first week, Ademola's skepticism held strong. He was a man of logic. A few disappearances in a remote village over 2 centuries could be explained away by a dozen rational things. But the tree, it had a presence. He'd find himself just watching it from his kitchen window, tracing the twisted patterns of its bark. Then the whispers started. It began as just a sigh on the wind, a sound he could almost convince himself was the rustle of dry grass. But it grew. It became more distinct, a woman's voice, soft and full of sorrow. Sometimes, late at night, he thought he could hear his name being called, Ademola. Then came the dreams, not nightmares, but vivid, unsettling visions. He saw the village through someone else's eyes, a woman with hands stained by roots and herbs, her heart full of a desire to heal. He saw the faces of the villagers twist from gratitude to suspicion and then to pure hatred. He felt the rough scrape of the rope across his neck, the sickening drop, and a final, all-consuming rage that burned hotter than any fire. He'd wake up with his heart pounding, the ghost of a branch scraping against his back. His pragmatism was fraying at the edges. He started tearing through the homestead, desperate to find something that would ground him back in reality. In a dusty chest in the attic, tucked beneath old blankets that smelled of earth and time, he found it, a leather-bound journal. It belonged to his great-uncle. The first few entries were mundane, notes about the weather, the garden, but then the tree started to take over the pages. October 12th. The villagers aren't unfriendly, but they are afraid. They fear the Baobab. I admit its size is imposing. It feels ancient, like it's witnessed all of history. November 4th. Heard the voice for the first time today. A whisper. Thought it was my imagination. Aya warned me. The story of Zola. Told her I don't believe in curses. December 1st. The whispers are clearer now. She says my name. At night, I dream of her. I feel her anger. It's like a cold stone in my own gut. Was I wrong to dismiss the legend? The entries grew more frantic. His great-uncle described the same shadows Ademola was now seeing at the edge of his property, fleeting shapes that vanished the moment he turned to look. He wrote about a heavy sorrow that settled over the homestead at dusk, a grief that wasn't his own. The final entry was short, the handwriting barely legible. January 20th. She isn't a ghost, she's part of the tree. The roots run deeper than I can imagine. She doesn't want revenge on the village. She wants company. She wants a guardian. She says the land is bound to her, and the owner is bound to the land. She says, it's my turn. I'm going out to the tree. I have to. The rest of the page was blank. That night, the whispers weren't just whispers anymore. As Ademola sat in the living room, the journal open in his trembling hands, a clear voice came from just outside the window, right next to the looming Baobab. It's your turn now. A loud, violent slam echoed from the attic. The door, which he'd left wide open, was now shut. A cold dread, colder than any Harmattan chill, washed over him. He was no longer a skeptic. He was a believer, and he was trapped. Panic gave way to a chilling resolve. Ademola wasn't going to be another blank page in someone's journal. He spent the next day poring over his great-uncle's notes, searching for a solution. Tucked into the back cover of the journal was a folded, brittle piece of paper. It was a hand-drawn map of the property, but with strange markings. His great-uncle had noted 3 other specific plants, a cluster of impefo near the stream, an aloe plant by the old stone wall, and a lone palm in a neglected corner of the garden. In folklore, all were plants of power, used for interacting with the spirit world. Beside each drawing was a note, impefo for protection, aloe for the heart, palm to bind. The final note read, "She is bound to the Baobab. To free the guardian, the Baobab must be given an offering, not of fear, but of peace. Show her she is not a monster, but a memory. Ademola understood. Zola's curse was born of betrayal. Maybe the key wasn't to fight her, but to appease her. That evening, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and blood, Ademola started his ritual. He went first to the impefo, its silver-gray leaves fragrant in the fading light. He cut a small bundle, its smoke known to ward off evil and connect to ancestors. Then he went to the aloe plant, a plant tied to healing, and took a single fleshy leaf. Finally, he approached the solitary palm and carefully cut a small frond. With the 3 items in his hand, he walked towards the ancient Baobab. The air grew heavy and cold. The whispers were all around him now, a chorus of sorrow and rage. Shadowy figures flickered between